Hey everybody, welcome back to Volt Academy. My name is Bo Pearson and I'm here with Coach Sarah Ray from Volt. And today we're going to talk about how strength training translates into human performance, into sport performance, how it benefits pretty much anybody. I'm bringing Sarah along on this talk because she has a very wide array of experience coaching. She has a bunch of different certifications, too many for us to list.
I'm a total letter junkie.
But they span all the way from sport performance to general population and personal training to military and different tactical units. So I thought she'd be a really valuable bank of knowledge for us to kind of dip into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cha-ching.
I know. Oh, I want to make sure you feel comfortable. I want to give you plenty of compliments.
It's working.
Good. So Sarah, before we jump into this wider topic of strength training, how it benefits pretty much anybody and how it plays into improved performance, can you give us a little bit of background on your training history, kind of how you started with strength training and kind of where you went from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a collegiate athlete. I ran track and field in college. Specifically, I fielded track. So I did the high jump and javelin. So for me, strength training was very much about sport performance optimization. I wanted to jump higher and throw farther. After college, I knew I wanted to stay involved with athletics, and I found my way into public health education, which turned into corporate wellness. So basically, I managed fitness centers for businesses that provided it to their employees. And I started to completely change my lens and scope of what performance actually means, because no longer was I working with elite athletes. I was working with desk jockeys and stay-at-home moms and police officers and firefighters. So my perspective on what strength training does for human performance has really covered everything from athletics to everyday life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's going to lend itself well into this conversation.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through how strength training specifically benefits both athletes and any other kind of population?
Yeah, for sure. I know we don't all identify as ourselves being athletes, but strength training benefits us all in the same way. It's just applied a little bit differently. So I'm actually going to use your whiteboard today.
Cool. Yeah,
I'm going to move our fern friend out of the way.
All right.
So whenever I think about strength training, no matter who I'm talking to, whether it be an athlete on a field or an athlete in the field, like military, I always start with this concept of preventing. So we're trying to prevent injury and create a more durable system. And strength training really helps us there by increasing our skeletal muscle mass, strengthening our joints and bones, and making us more resilient against the things that might happen to cause us to be injured. Because nobody likes being injured. It takes us away from the things we love in our jobs. And if you're an athlete, being on the sideline is the worst.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So past just preventing injury, the next thing I like to think about is that strength training is helping us prepare. Now, if you're an athlete on a team and you're playing a sport, you're preparing by getting yourself ready for that game day. You're spending time in the weight room to get faster, stronger, throw farther, jump higher. If you're an everyday person, you're preparing to tackle the demands of everyday life, like helping a friend move a heavy couch up a flight of stairs, or picking your overly filled suitcase up into that overhead bin without anyone else's help. So preparing is kind of that next echelon of the strength training pyramid. And what we're ultimately trying to get to up at the top is the big one. Now this one makes a lot of sense for our sport athletes. Performing, you're hitting game day, you're trying to win the game, you're trying to be the best athlete you can be. But for the everyday person, perform can mean something totally different. Being able to contribute to our hobbies that we have outside of work, which I know you all have hobbies outside of work. We like to run, hopefully. And if you don't, you better get one. Running, gardening, hiking, everything requires some sort of physical ability. And the more you strength train, the more likely you are to excel in those hobbies, the things that make our lives better.
Yeah, it's kind of a multiplier in that sense, right? If you have more control over yourself, if you are more durable, then you can enjoy these things at a kind of a higher level.
Exactly.
Right? And not worry about getting hurt or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about, okay, I like to strength train, maybe I don't like to strength train, whatever it might be, but I also like to do yoga, or I also like to go I'm part of a cycling club or something.
Sure.
does it make sense to do both of those? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think not only does it make sense to do both those things, you should do all those things. I always use the phrase jack of all trades, master of none, because the instant you specialize in something, you leave yourself vulnerable to injuries in other ways. So all of our runners should be strength training, and all of our weightlifters should be running, myself included.
Yeah. I don't love running, but you know, sometimes it's nice to get away. And
that's right.
Nobody
It's
can
good
really
for
talk to
something.
you. And, yeah.
Nobody can talk to you.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I run. I run to get away from conversations.
That's great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, myself included, are kind of wondering, you know, where do I go from here? When I was done with playing college baseball, I was like, okay, what's next for me? And you know, it's helpful to have a little bit more background so I can make the decisions that make the most sense for me, that I can enjoy. So
yeah,
thanks for sharing all of that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining for this episode of Volt Academy. If you do have questions, we highly encourage you to just engage with us using the comment section below, whether those are topics you'd like for us to touch on, or if you want us to dive in depth on any of the topics we've already discussed. We'd love to hear from you. You know how to follow us on social, engage with us, email us, whatever you'd like to do. But we'll see you all again next time for Volt Academy.